It used to be that homeowners planned to pay off their mortgages and live out their retirement debt free. However, a 2018 survey by the national mortgage firm American Financing found that about 44% of Americans between the ages of 60 and 70 have mortgages when they retire. Nearly 17% of them think they'll never pay off that mortgage, and 32% predict it's going to take them more than 8 years. Why is that? For many families, sending their child to a costly college is expensive. We've all heard about student college loan debt is growing. Americans owe over $1.77 trillion in student loan debt, 43 million borrowers as of 22. Borrowers owe an average of $37,717 in federal loans. 3 million people over the age of 60 are still paying off their college loans. The problem is that families often overpay for college, taking on too much debt and harming their savings and retirement plans because they tumble unprepared into the late stage college funding pressure cooker. It's hard to consider college planning a significant financial challenge for families when all you want to do is send your kid to a good college, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, we need context to understand all the forces that come into play, and here's a quick rundown of many of the critical aspects of this challenge. Both parents and students feel academic and social pressure competition. Colleges target your child, wanting them to apply mostly so they can reject their application. Impending deadlines promote tension and rash decisions by parents and children. Your student's college list may be simply unrealistic, influenced by ranking lists, and uninformed about the actual cost, degree earning power, and average years of graduation. High school guidance counselors aren't trained to help families figure out how to pay for college, and families lack the knowledge and guidance. All these dynamics contribute to something none of us want to happen: overpaying for college. And that's why I do this video. That late stage college funding pressure cooker can deliver some pretty miserable results. Many parents tap into their home equity or take out large second mortgages to pay for college. Many of them have yet to pay off those mortgages before they retire. Some divert retirement funds to pay for tuition or work longer than they had hoped or planned. The glaring truth is that most families need more knowledge and guidance on getting the best college price. Before we go on, I'm Tim Gardner, founder and wealth manager at Chatham Retirement Partners. We provide wealth management services to the sandwich generation, just without all the baloney. For joining me and committing to learning more about college planning and funding. I assure you one thing about this presentation: you'll be better prepared to meet the late stage college funding challenges once we're done. You may be wondering, why is Tim talking about it? I do this to serve my clients and my community because I've seen so many families struggle with these issues. Getting kids through grade school, then high school is hard enough. And you may be saving for an eventual college tuition, then boom, your kid is a junior or senior, and you've just realized you haven't planned enough. The cost of tuition, room, and board are higher than you expect. Stress increases as you receive piles of slick brochures from fancy colleges and hear your friends discuss where their kids are going. This leads to poor decision making, which may negatively impact your family's financial health for years or even decades to come. I've seen that happen, to help you before you reach that stage. Your son or daughter can go to a good school, have a great college experience, and do it without saddling any of you with undue debt. That's why I do this presentation. And in case you're wondering, I also want to assure you this is not a sales pitch. You'll hear nothing remotely close to a sales pitch during this video. To help you learn more about what I'm going to discuss, I've attached a handout, The Parent's Guide to Cutting College Cost, which is a good overview of what we're talking about. With issues such as college planning, where everyone's decisions are unique and personal to their circumstances, I encourage you to use the link below to schedule a complimentary meeting with me so we can conduct an expected family contribution analysis for you to understand the strategy that works best for you and your family, so that you're not tapping into your retirement funds to pay for college. We'll talk more about this later. When it comes to late stage college planning, the biggest problem is that there needs to be a plan. It's not too late until they send you your acceptance letter. I don't want to make things seem completely hopeless. Your joining me indicates you're ready to tackle a big financial planning issue for families. That's a good sign, because there are steps you can start taking now to make this period in your life less stressful. You'll be less pressured if you have your late stage strategy ready to roll. By now, you're probably tired of me introducing all the complications, and you're thinking, What is the most important thing I need to know to avoid overpaying? This brings us to our first key. Parents must lead the college selection process with their child as co pilot because you have the most to lose. Lose means picking the wrong school, overpaying for it, and underestimating the total costs, including how many years it'll take for them to earn a degree. I'm not saying the student shouldn't be involved in the college funding process. That's not true at all. However, parents must know that what they will pay and where the money is going to come from. It's all too easy to go into the search process unthinkingly, looking at every school that shows up at the college fair or sends you glossy marketing material. And the student falls in love with a particular school. I know a specific family that let their child apply to their dream school, NYU, just to see. Of course, the kid got in. The father found it impossible to tell him no. Unfortunately, NYU is traditionally stingy about giving out scholarships, so the dad paid more than they could afford. It's much better to know your facts and figures at the beginning and search for colleges with your eyes wide open. Here are a few items about college that you don't see or hear much about, but I want to put them in front of you so you understand why it's so critical for you to run the college selection process along with your child. Now, several large organizations, notably US News and World Report, love to tout their college ranking list, but don't be fooled. You should not use these lists to determine where your child should develop their list from. Why? Because they encourage institutional lousy behavior, like cheating and admission tricks. They have a formula that can be gained. They make popularity a significant ratings factor. They use a 6-year graduation rate. They encourage schools to favor affluent students through merit scholarships, and they don't measure what's important. Next, you might be wondering, can I send my child to a good school without blowing my savings? The answer is yes, and this brings us to our second main point. The news media likes to hype the rising cost of college and staggering student loans. These are true. However, they miss the critical detail that higher education is currently a buyer's market despite the news about increasing costs and high rejection rates. Price discounts are standard among state universities and private institutions. Schools give discounts through grants and scholarship. One thing you should take away from the slide is it's not just the A students who get scholarships and grants. Just look at the high percentage of students getting price breaks. Nearly everyone attending a private college receives a price cut from their school. For years now, tuition discounts have been creeping up. The percentage of students receiving grants and scholarships at private schools is at a historic high. The average tuition discount at private colleges and universities is historic, 62.1%. This slide shows how a typical discount slashes the tuition price. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why schools are giving out so much money. Here's the reason. It's a buyer's market for most schools. This might seem strange because all the media focuses on the most elite universities, which reject all their applicants. The schools at the top of the rankings see how they can reject the most teenagers. Most schools, however, don't enjoy that kind of advantage. They have to work to fill their freshman class, and financial incentives attract students. Here's a closer look at what colleges are up against during admission season. By now, you're probably feeling intrigued or overwhelmed by this information. Regardless, you probably want to know, what are the key things to focus on to navigate the college funding process with all this new information. Gather your school's pegs, and by that price, expected family contribution, graduation rate, and starting salary, to identify the best deals and prices for your child. PEG stands for price, expected family contribution, graduation rate, and salary. Let's look at each one of these briefly. Let's start with price, which means the net price calculators. You use these tools to discover the school's actual cost. Let's take a look. One of the most infuriating aspects of the college admission process is that families wouldn't know what any college would cost until their child received their financial aid or merit award package. Even worse, they may not have gotten this offer until spring, which would give them little or no time to select a school by the deposit deadline, which is traditionally May the 1st. Applying to schools can be less of a financial crapshoot if you use the net price calculators before your child even applies to college. A net price calculator should provide you with a personalized estimate of a particular school's cost. The net price represents what a student must pay after subtracting scholarships and grants from federal, state, and schools. Using a calculator, some families will discover that a $55,000 a year university will cost $20,000, $10,000, maybe even less. For other families, it's going to cost $55,000. Let's say, for example, that a college costs $50,000 a year, and the student will receive a $30,000 award from the school and a $5,000 grant from the state. Their net price for that student would be $15,000 a year. The net price equals the actual price of the college because it only considers free money and disregards any loans in the cost. Federal law requires schools to post net price calculators on their websites for first-year students. Some schools will even provide calculators for transfer students as well. If you want to avoid budget-busting schools, knowing the actual prices of particular schools before your child falls in love with them is critical. Turning to net price calculators could save you tens of thousands of dollars by focusing your efforts on schools that will be more generous to you and your family. Too many parents feel guilted into paying for a college that far exceeds their budget, which can jeopardize their retirement plans. Knowing in advance what schools cost will help families draw up an appropriate college list and reduce financial surprises. Thanks to net price calculators, there's no reason why students and parents can't have a good idea of what a college will cost before they decide to even apply. Now, helpful calculators require information from your tax return and your latest non-retirement account statements. You'll want to gather them up before you start using these calculators. Your family should use these calculators to understand what sort of applicants capture the best awards from an institution. What kind of grade point average or test scores does it take for a student to win a more significant award from that specific school? With this tool, your family can manipulate the figures to see whether it is worth their while for your child to retake the essay or the ACT. Would a higher test score boost your child's potential package? Would a slightly higher GPA matter? It can also be essential to measure what kind of impact, if any, the family's home equity would have on that award. With so much money at stake, it's worth taking the time to use these calculators strategically. Finding a net price calculator for some schools' websites can be difficult. An easy way to go about it is to Google the school's name and net price calculator. You need to understand that not all calculators are good ones. The weakest calculators rely on the federal template. Using these could take less than a minute or two to complete. The questions they ask are more varied, which leads to dubious cost estimates. Federal calculators only ask income ranges, but a good calculator will require specific information from your tax return and your investment accounts. Wrong calculators will rely on old data. Some calculators are currently using the 1718 data, so check your figures. These federal calculators are only meant to provide personalized estimates to families seeking need-based aid. Even then, need-based aid answers are simply averages. They do not calculate merit scholarships. If the school you're looking at uses the federal net price calculator, you'll see icons like these on the website. However, not all schools that use the federal calculator will display these icons. Now let's move on to the E in PEGS, and that stands for the expected family contribution, a federally calculated number that tells you what you're expected to pay. Your expected family contribution is a dollar figure that representing what financial aid formula believes your household should be able to pay for 1 year of your child's college education. For schools that strictly use the free application for federal student aid, the new term for the FE is the Student Aid Index, or SAI. The other primary aid application will continue to use the term EFC. Your SAI or EFC is different from what you will pay. Your EFC or SAI is based on several factors, including income, non-retirement money, educational account assets, household size, and parents' marital status. The CSS profile also cares about the number of students in college. The ESAI will give you a good idea whether you will qualify for need-based aid or if you should seek out schools that provide more merit scholarships. This helps as you go shopping for colleges. I can help you out in this area. I'll walk you through obtaining an EFC and help you learn how to use it when comparing schools. I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. Keep in mind, 2 EFC financial aid formulas exist. The federal formula is tied to the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, which students must complete. This federal aid application to qualify for federal and state aid at any school they attend. Most colleges will also use the FAFSA to determine who will receive their in-house assistance. The institutional formula is tied to the CSS formula. created by the College Board. About 200 private schools use this formula to determine who will get their in-house money. Some public universities, including the University of Virginia and the University of Michigan, also use this profile. Two formulas have some significant differences. Sometimes the EFC will be similar using each formula, but other times it won't. So check them out. Families must file the FAFSA to qualify for federal and state aid. Most state and private schools and universities also use FAFSA to determine who gets their institutional need-based aid. The schools that use the CSS profile will use the aid application to determine who receives institutional financial aid. A family's lowest federal EFC is now a negative $1,500. That means a student experiences extreme poverty and cannot pay for college. In contrast, there is no cap on an EFC for high-income families. It's possible to see an EFC of $80,000 or even $100,000 or more. When the EFC is high and need-based aid is out of the question, you look for schools that provide merit scholarships to affluent students. Getting a ballpark idea of your EFC SAI in your child's first year of high school or even earlier is best. Obtaining a preliminary EFC will give you a rough idea of what kind of financial obligation you'll have. Families usually pay more for college than the EFC indicates because most schools do not meet 100% of the students' demonstrated financial need. Consequently, it's essential to identify the most generous schools that would consider your child an attractive candidate. We'll get into that detail a little bit later. Now, working the EFC calculator can be tricky to use, as you need to understand which aspects of your finances need to be included and which need to be excluded when completing the process. I offer this service whenever I make this presentation, and I'll give you more information later on how you can request an EFC analysis. Your EFC SAI is produced through the calculator on the College Board website. It uses methodologies we discussed before and produces two EFCs for you, one generated by FAFSA and the other is generated by the institutional profile. You need to have your latest tax return and investment records for. Let's take a few minutes here and run through some EFC scenario to give you an idea of what EFCs are possible. Let's start with an example of a middle-class family with an average income and fairly low savings. I'm only using non-retirement money in my examples because the formulas don't consider retirement money in their calculations. In this example, there's a married couple with one child heading to college and a younger sibling. Let's look at their EFC results. The EFC SAI for this family using the federal methodology is about $3,500 and $1,300 with the institutional methodology. The family would ideally look for schools that provide excellent need-based aid because their ability to pay for college is limited. This could come from in-state universities or private colleges offering generous assistance. Now, here's an example of how much aid a family with a low EFC of $3,500 would be eligible for when applying to an expensive school. Only about 6 dozen colleges and universities say they meet. Let's look at a high-income family. This family has more assets, home equity, and considerably more income. Like the previous example, 4 people are in this household with married parents, and the oldest is heading off to college. The EFC SAI for this household ranges from about $50,000 to almost $42,000. Some elite schools provide this family with need-based aid. However, most schools, this family would look for institutions that provide hefty merit scholarships to high-income families. There is no cap on the family's EFC, so some very wealthy parents will have EFCs that exceed the cost of an expensive university. The two aid formulas provide a welcome financial perk to households with more than one child in college simultaneously. Traditionally, the federal EFC, known as the SAI, would drop 50% for families with 2 kids in college. However, the FAFSA formulas starting with the 24-25 school year no longer shrink the EFC for multiple children in school. This represents a financial penalty for millions of families. However, the CSS profile still provides sibling discounts in its formula. The institutional EFC drops by 40% when 2 siblings are in college, or even more when 3 or more siblings are in college. A family that might not qualify for need-based aid with 1 child in college may be eligible with 2 or more kids in school using the CSS profile. Subtracting the EFC from the school's price tag can determine if a student is eligible for need-based financial aid. In this example, there's no chance of need-based assistance because the family's EFC exceeds the price of the private college. The student wouldn't qualify for need-based aid here. Instead, they would hope for a merit scholarship. In this scenario, the student would be eligible for need-based up to $20,000 from a private college because the price of the institution exceeds the family's EFC. As a practical matter, a family with an EFC this high would typically look for schools that provide generous merit scholarships, would primarily be elite schools with excellent financial aid that would give this family need-based assistance. First, families with small EFCs should look at colleges that provide generous need-based financial aid in their state schools, which usually have need-based programs for residents and are typically lower prices. Filing the FAFSA as early as possible is essential, since students tend to receive twice as much grant money from state programs and state universities. Be sure to write down the date to file your FAFSA. The first opportunity to file the FAFSA for the 24-25 admission season was December of 23. The first day to file typically is October 1st of your child's senior year. The delay at the time was due to extensive changes in the FAFSA that kept the Department of Education preoccupied, hence kicking down the can of the application date. Now, families with large EFCs should look for private and state schools that give good merit aid to many students. Most elite private universities tend to provide little or no merit scholarships because they have plenty of high-income students who will come without a price break. That should give you a sense of how the EFC plays out. After you obtain your EFC, you can hone in on what type of schools are most appropriate for you to aim for. The G in PEG stands for graduation rate. This part of your school analysis looks at the percentage of students who graduate and how long it takes them to do so. Most parents assume their child will graduate in 4 years. According to federal statistics, a 4-year graduation rate from a private college and university is about 54% and 37% from state schools. It's always important to check the 4-year grad rates since a delay in graduation can significantly boost the cost of college. Significant differences exist among the same schools and majors, so always check. Also, check a school's freshman retention rate. Ideally, you want the rate to be very high. If the schools on your list don't have a high retention rate, find out why. You can find out 4, 5, and 6-year graduation rates at College Results Online. You can also see the 6-year graduation rates broken down by race, ethnicity, gender, and income. The difference between grad rates among men and women in different ethnicities can be drastic. To find this site, simply Google college completion. The Federal College Navigator is a source for 4-year graduation rates. Here's a screenshot of how a school's graduation rates will be represented. You'll also see first-year student retention rates. Unfortunately, many graduation rate resources only share 6-year or even 8-year graduation rates. You must look at the 4-year rates, which is common sense. Simply don't know of any parent who wants to pay 5 or more years for a college education. The S in PEGS stands for salary. As part of your evaluation process, you also want to look at the school's salary outcomes and consider them in the context of how much you're willing to pay for your child's degree. Parents tend to overpay based on assumptions and rankings, but a big investment isn't always worth it. Many families assume that a student's school will drive their salary. If you get into an elite school, a student will be guaranteed an excellent salary and a career. Statistics from the federal government show that the selected academic major is hugely important. A great place to check out salary incomes for individual majors at specific colleges is to take advantage of the ROI research conducted by the Foundation for Research Equity Opportunity.org. It's a think tank. Researchers use federal data to calculate the ROI for 30,000 bachelor's degrees and 40,000 graduate degrees. The free.org analysis of federal data shows the ROI of majors within schools varies drastically. At the University of Virginia, biology majors, for instance, ultimately had negative ROIs, while business majors have an ROI of more than $2 million. You can also check the ROI on graduate degrees for almost 14,000 majors. Graduate degrees tend to be much more expensive, reducing the student's ROI. It's stunning how many negative ROIs there are at New York University. Another resource for overall earnings at individual schools is the Federal College Scorecard, which doesn't break salaries down by majors. Clarity about the pegs for the schools on your list is very helpful. That's not the whole picture yet. Still probably wondering, will my kid qualify for financial aid? And how does that fit in with grants, scholarships, and even loans? This brings us to our fourth key, the common question. Will my kid qualify for aid? This question is best answered when you understand how discounts, scholarships, and loans work to produce the lowest college cost possible. Let's look at the types of financial aid first. There are four that you'll see here. We'll run through the definitions quickly so we know we're all on the same page, okay? First, we have grants. They don't need to be replaced. They're primarily need-based. They're often from state and federal governments, such as Pell Grants. Second, related resource for money is scholarships. They also don't need to be repaid and are usually awarded based on merit and other criteria such as geographic location, talents, athletic, academic, or merit, and come from various sources or private foundations, corporations, and colleges. And then there are loans. We won't go deeply into college loans now. However, two main types of federal loans are strictly for students. The more attractive option is the direct subsidized loan, in which the government pays the interest while the student is in school, during the grace period and the deferment periods. There must be a demonstrated financial need to qualify for this loan. There is the direct unsubsidized loan, where the student pays the interest during all periods or defers interest while enrolled, which accumulates. There's no financial need for this federal unsubsidized loan. We also have Direct Plus loans for parents. These loans are designed to help families pay for educational expenses not otherwise covered by financial aid. And finally, here's some other options. You could get a home line of equity. Remember the repayment periods, length, and how this will impact your retirement plans. You can also get a private loan to pay for college. These typically require a good to excellent credit, and various institutions underwrite these loans. Now, about two-thirds of students pay for college with the help of a scholarship or grants. That type of financial assistance comes from four sources you can see here. The most significant sources are from the federal government and the institution itself. Okay, let's look what comprises federal aid. There are three sources of federal help for parents and students. Most are income-based, such as grant, work-study jobs, loans for students and parents, and tax credits such as the American Opportunity Tax Credit and the Lifetime Learning Tax Credit. Since income limits exist, families shut out of federal grants can qualify for federal college loans. However, by filing the FAFSA, parents and students can access federal student and parent loans. Now, the vast majority of federal money is awarded through the Pell Grant program. The maximum award is $7,395. Most families eligible for at least a partial Pell Grant have incomes below $70,000. The higher the family income and the smaller the household, the lower potential for a Pell Award. That's the federal government. Let's talk about the states. All states have their aid programs, but they vary in what they offer. Most state grants go to students who require financial assistance. However, some states dispense most of their aid based on grade point averages and standardized test scores. Most states award the majority of their aid by merit are located in the South, and these programs often benefit more affluent families. The National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators websites provide links to aid programs available in each of the 50 states. Now, unless money is no object, it makes sense for a student to include one or more in-state public universities in their college list. In-state schools, however, won't always be the least expensive option, even though that's a widely held belief. If you need financial aid, you must be aware that public universities rarely give need-based aid to non-residents. Tuition price for non-residents is typically 2 to 3 times higher. Non-residents looking for college money should consider merit scholarships awarded regardless of income. The percentage of college money devoted to merit scholarships has grown dramatically over the last several years. That's primarily due to three reasons. Like their peers at the private colleges, administrators at state universities are interested in increasing their U.S. news rankings. One way to do that is to give merit awards to attract students with higher academic profiles that the U.S. News favors. Public universities also use merit scholarships to attract non-residents who typically pay more than in-state students. This helps the institute's bottom line, especially as schools have suffered from reduced state government funding beginning about 15 years ago. The competition for good students is high among many state universities, and they must boost their merit awards to attract them. State schools often need more applicants to look at a student holistically. A school could have tens of thousands of applications. Consequently, state universities must heavily rely on GPA and SAT and scores to make admissions decisions and award merit scholarships. This makes it easier to understand what kind of merit scholarship a student might qualify for at a public university. Use Google to find the scholarships that an individual school offers. Scholarships can be more accessible and more prominent at less popular state universities. For instance, winning a merit scholarship at the University of Colorado, a very popular destination, is more difficult academically than winning an award at the University of New Mexico or the University of Maine. Remember that many of the most popular state universities, which enjoy great brand names or located near desirable locations such as ski slopes, can command higher prices for outside students. The sticker prices will be lower at schools that aren't in such high demand. Public research universities like UCLA, UC Berkeley, Virginia, Michigan, and Texas, as well as the elite private research universities like the Ivies, will meet their admission goals. These schools don't have to worry about attracting applicants with scholarships. Here's an illustration of how state universities can share their merit awards with families. Quote from the University of Utah's website: individual academic departments can also offer scholarships. For affluent students, the most likely source for money will be colleges themselves. Most private schools provide merit money and need-based aid to wealthy students. More than 20% of college students are enrolled in private or nonprofit schools. Many parents automatically assume that private colleges will be too expensive and don't consider them, which can be a mistake. Although private schools are indeed more costly than in-state universities, the actual price won't always be as high. Higher education is a buyer's market. Despite the news about increased costs and high rejection rates, for years now, tuition discounts have been creeping up. The percentage of first-year students receiving grants and scholarships at private schools are at a historic high of 91%. Private colleges and universities routinely award merit scholarships to families who won't qualify for need-based aid. Schools also widely practice what's called preferential packaging. The best awards go to the applicants that the institution wants. The student who is among the top 25% of accepted students at that institution is more likely to obtain a good package. Families also need to understand that the more the college costs, the more likely the family would qualify for need-based aid. Some accepted students could receive both need-based and merit scholarships. What really matters is getting a discount. It doesn't matter whether the discount comes via merit or loans. If you won't qualify for need-based aid and money is tight, the most highly ranked universities are the worst places to apply for college financially. Look at the top U.S. news rankings and see what kind of schools those include. Universities in this category include the Ivy, Stanford, MIT, Caltech, and Northwestern. Schools like these are deluged with high-income candidates, so they don't have to offer merit scholarships to attract them to their university. While there are nearly 2,800 four-year colleges and universities in the United States, only about 6 dozen claim to meet 100% of the demonstrated financial need of all or most of their first-year students. Schools that are most likely to provide the best need-based financial are the elite schools. You'll likely get in to schools like this if your family needs much financial help. In contrast, if you're wealthy and your child gets into one of these highly rated schools, you're likely to pay the total price. Schools that offer the most generous need-based aid are among the most highly ranked U.S. News and World Report. These schools tend to offer large endowments and attract many students who pay the total price so they can afford to offer generous packages to those who need the help. Students requiring financial assistance to attend these schools have pretty much won the financial or educational lottery. Of course, these schools are among the hardest to get into. On the other hand, these schools don't have to give much merit to students who don't qualify for financial need. They don't have to because there are plenty of high income students whose parents are willing to pay the total price. The schools that are most likely to provide discounts to nearly all of their accepted students are the ones that aren't well known. Many institutions fall into this category and are colleges with master's levels universities. These colleges often only educate undergraduates and have a few, if any, graduate programs. In contrast, professor research and educating graduate students are number one and number two priorities at research universities. Undergraduates represent the third priorities at these schools. Research universities are the institutions least likely to provide merit awards because they're so popular they don't need to offer discounts to as many students. High-income students attending elite research universities are more likely to pay the total cost or close to it. Assess whether the school will provide good need-based aid or merit awards is to visit college data website. On the homepage, type the school's name to get a quick look, then click the school's financials link. You'll be brought to a page with the school's cost of attendance, then scroll down to see some interesting statistics. At a college's financial statistics, you want to see the percentage of students that receive merit awards and what that average is. For need-based aid, you want to see what percentage of students the schools typically meet and what percentage of the students had their complete needs met. You also want to see if the awards typically include the highest offers and then decrease after the first year. Click on the school's financial link to get the financial data for the individual school. I'll illustrate what you can find on the school's financial section using Pomona College. Near the top, the school meets 100% of the financial needs. This is excellent for someone who needs help with college costs. Pomona's average need-based award is $51,856, which is very high. The slide also shows that Pomona doesn't offer merit scholarships. The average non-need-based aid category is blank. That means a wealthy family with a high FCE will pay the full price. This slide illustrates a school, Loyola Marymount University, that typically provides poor financial aid and small merit awards. On average, the school only meets 69% of the need, which needs to be improved. The average need-based award is $11,616, which is small considering the school's cost of attendance is over $78,000. This example shows that the typical financial aid package isn't nearly as good as Pomona's. Still, it does provide affluent students with higher merit awards than highly selective universities. Like many private colleges, Beloit College has to offer better merit awards to attract students to the school without a national reputation. Its average merit scholarship is $41,660. Let's take a look at private scholarships. Private scholarships are outside awards from foundations, charities, companies, and even civics groups. Competition for nationally known private scholarships is fierce. For example, in recent years, the Coca-Cola Scholars received 112,000 applications for 250 awards. That makes the Coca-Cola Scholars about 25 times more selective than Stanford. Your child will face better odds if they focus on capturing local scholarships. These scholarships are available via high school counselors, libraries, parents' workplaces, or local papers. They aren't easy to find, so not many students are applying. Scholarship sites like fastwebscholarships.com and the College Board research engines usually don't have these local scholarships in their databases. Keep in mind, students will have better luck looking at scholarships that require essays since many teenagers don't deal with and require. Students who win private scholarships are often surprised that their awards are reduced with their financial aid packages. Since students don't have to report all outside scholarships to their financial aid officers, many schools see this as an opportunity to save some money and reduce the amount they award to a student. In cases where the scholarship amount would push the total aid award over the cost of attendance, the federal government requires schools to adjust the financial aid award. You could only receive what it would cost to go to that school. If a teen wins a private scholarship, the college would shrink their financial aid package by the award amount. So if the child wins a $3,000 scholarship, the college would cut their package by $3,000. Best case scenario, the school would reduce the loan portion of the package by the amount of the outside scholarship, but it can also shrink the grant and loan portion. Each school maintains its policy applying to an outside scholarship on the financial aid package, and you must check with each school for its policy regarding outside scholarships. Sadly, this college practice will only affect students in a position to afford the college. Affluent students who receive merit scholarships from their schools don't have to worry about outside scholarships shrinking their awards. Higher income students who don't qualify for financial aid can earn any outside scholarship, and it won't jeopardize their merit. Okay, we're getting towards the end of the presentation, and no doubt many of you are feeling like, yeah, yikes, this is so much information. How do we smartly process and proceed? It's a great question that leads us to our final set of points. So first, let's look at where we started. We started with our main challenge. Families often overpay for college, take on too much debt, and harm their savings and retirement plans because they need to prepare for late-stage college funding. Then we looked at the details behind these main points. Parents must lead the college selection process. Higher education is a buyer's market. Be sure to gather the pegs: price, expected family contribution, graduation rates, and starting salary to begin your process. Understand how financial aid works to get the best price. And this brings us to the conclusion. Start developing your college funding strategy by getting an expected family contribution analysis. From that baseline, you can gather the rest of the critical information you need to start the hunt for the right school with the lowest possible tuition, protecting your retirement plans. College education is a buyer's market, and the adage knowledge is power is true. As an informed consumer, you can get the best education at the lowest cost and minimize the risk to damaging your retirement savings. I invite you to come into my office for a complimentary one-on-one expected family contribution analysis with a personal focus on your family and your student. You'll find your expected family contribution together using the calculator can be tricky, and some parents just guess when filling it out. Then we'll walk through the expected aid, grants, scholarships, and loans that your family might expect to qualify for and where you're likely to get them from. Taking your EFC and what you are prepared to pay will go college shopping and use the net price calculators for the schools your child should or shouldn't apply. So take your first step now and sign up for an EFC analysis meeting using the link below. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.